cold January day in the metro station in Washington, D.C. A man opened his violin case that he was carrying, took out his bow and his violin, put the case open in front of him on the cold concrete, picked up his bow and began to play. The sound of the violin reverberated over the hustle and bustle of the metro station as people hurried by, and nobody took note, not one person at all. After 3 minutes, one man slowed his pace and stopped to listen for a few seconds, and then he hurried on. A minute later, a woman walked by and threw some money in the case. A few minutes later, another passerby leaned against the wall listening for just a moment before dashing off to their train. But the one who paid most attention was a 3-year-old boy, captured by the sound and the motion of the violinist. Much to his mother's chagrin, he stopped, he looked, he listened, and when his mother sought to drag him away, he resisted, digging in his heels and looking over his shoulder the whole time she dragged him off in a different direction. That scene was repeated 3 other times by 3 other children as their parents urged them along. In the 45 minutes that man played, 6 people stopped to listen, and $32 in small bills and coins was dropped in his open violin case. And when he stopped playing, nobody noticed and nobody clapped, which was quite amazing, because the violinist was none other than Joshua Bell, world-renowned violinist, playing an exquisite violin worth millions of dollars, playing 6 Bach pieces that he had played to a packed concert hall in Boston, Massachusetts, just a week before. The early morning concert was a social experiment. It was a social experiment about perception and priorities. It was designed to answer the question, do we recognize greatness and do we recognize beauty when it comes to us in unexpected places? It was answering the question, are we willing to turn aside and stop and admire and bask in beauty and greatness and be inspired by it when it catches us in unexpected times and places? I guess all the people who passed by answered that question. In our story today from Exodus this morning, Moses, who was busy, intent on tending the flocks of his father-in-law, sees at some distance a bush that is burning but not consumed. He says to himself, And then he decides to turn aside. And he says, I will go over and see this strange sight. He turns aside to see it. He turns aside from his duties. He turns aside from his routine. He turns aside, and he encounters God. As he stands gazing at the sight, a voice calls to him from the bush, Moses, Moses. And did you hear what Moses said in reply? He answered the voice that was God by saying, I am here. That's what he said. I am here. In other words, you've got my attention. I'm here. I ask you this morning, what gets your attention? I know what gets my attention. My cell phone gets my attention. That's what gets my attention. I'm addicted to that thing. Or how about Facebook? Or how about the news? Or how about cable news? Do you find yourself picking up your phone or turning on the TV just looking for the next bad headline? Do you know that the average visitor who drives to the Grand Canyon spends between 8 and 15 minutes actually looking at the vista? After driving all that way, apparently they go and spend more time in the gift shop or in the restaurant than they do gazing at the grandeur. When are you aware of the presence of God beside you, around you, within you? Do you remember in school in the morning the teacher would take attendance by calling out your name, Philip Rocket, and I would respond, here. That here was supposed to mean that I was present and that I was ready to learn, but too often it simply meant that I was accounted for and too tired and resistant to learn. Have you noticed how difficult it is to be present where you are? How difficult it is to be here. We are always tempted to be partially somewhere else. But if we want an authentic spirituality, we need to show up where we are now. We need to resist escaping. We need to pay attention. Because in this passage, Moses is not the only one who says, here I am. No, later in the passage, after God has commissioned Moses to go to the Pharaoh and to lead the people of Israel out of captivity, Moses, in a moment of insecurity, says, but who am I to tell the people that sent me? And God says, tell them that I am sent you. Yes. And in that moment, Moses encounters God's being. Yes. Recently, a number of you have been telling me about your anxiety about the state of the world, and I feel that same anxiety. Some of you have been talking to me about your concerns about the prospects of the elections. Some of you have been talking to me about your exhaustion and your overextension at work. Some of you have been talking to me about your health concerns. Some of you have been talking to me about your family concerns. We have to do something, one person said to me. And I agree. There are a number of things that we do need to do. But this morning, I don't want to just talk about what we have to do. I want to do the most important thing, which is to be present to God, to encounter God, and to be present to each other and to encounter each other. I want us not just to come to church and talk about God or talk about what we ought to do. I want us this morning, right now, in this service, like Moses, to turn aside from what we tell ourselves we should be doing, even in church, and be open to a primary encounter with the divine right here and right now. So, adventuresome people do new things. And so this morning, I've asked my friend Stephanie Osborne to come and to lead us in a time of meditation and of structured conversation with each other. Come on, Stephanie. We did this once before in January, and I was surprised and pleased by the positive impact that it had on people. And Stephanie's been leading a time of meditation almost every Sunday afterwards here, her own gracious gift to us to do that. So we're going to do something this morning different. We're not just going to talk about God or about our relationship with God. We're going to be present. Stephanie, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I know that everyone's probably comfortable where they're seated, and if you are super comfortable, you may stay where you are. But I would love to invite people to come and sit here in this space, because this is where we'll be connecting. Okay, so if you would like to take a couple seconds to move over, please do. If not, you're welcome to stay where you are. But we usually talk about I am in reference to who am I in relationship to the people closest to us. I am his husband, I am her mother, I am their parents or whatever. And we also talk about I am in reference to what we do for a living. But today we're going to talk about I am in reference to what we're doing in the present moment. Because a lot of times we have anxiety, depression, and stress because we're living in the past or we're anxious about what might happen in the future. So today we're going to use the acronym SIFT, S-I-F-T, SIFT in reference to sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. And I'm going to guide you through it. And then we're going to do a connection exercise. So everyone, start off by just looking down. Looking down. And you might see your lap or your hands on your lap. And then slowly, I'm just going to turn this way. Look slowly to the left of you. You might see on the cushion next to you or the rug, someone else's legs. And look up a little bit. You might see your neighbor's shoulder to the left. To the left. And then look up a little more, seeing the walls next to you to the left, and looking up, noticing the lights, looking all the way up at the ceiling. Have you ever noticed the ceiling? The light fixtures. And looking all the way to your right. Notice the glass as if you've never seen it before. Notice the windows. Looking a little more to your right, a little further down. Noticing these beautiful pictures. A little further down towards your shoulder, to the right. And then again, all the way to the floor, your lap. And gently close your eyes. In that moment, you were seeing. And now just listen. Listen for the streetcar passing by. Listen intently. Noticing any subtle hum in this church. Say silently to yourself, I am listening. And with your eyes remaining closed, I'm going to recite some images. And as I recite the image, allow yourself to see it in your mind. And then when I shift to another image, allow yourself to shift. So visualize a baby laughing. And visualize a bouquet of flowers. Visualize a sunset. As you're visualizing, say silently to yourself, I am visualizing. And visualize a rainbow. And now visualize yourself sitting where you are. And visualize me standing before you. And now feel what it feels like to be relaxed. How does it feel? Feel what it feels like to be hugged, embraced by someone who really loves you. What does it feel like to be excited? And feel what it feels like to be in joy. And silently to yourself say, I am feeling. And feel what it feels like to be peaceful. And now we will be silent for a couple minutes. And when you notice thoughts arise, silently to yourself, I am thinking. And after you tell yourself, I am thinking, return to focusing on your breath. So just notice your thoughts. And with your eyes remaining closed, listen for the 3 chimes. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. There are many benefits to being in silence and in stillness. It helps lower your blood pressure. It reduces anxiety, depression, and stress. It helps you sleep better. It helps you to respond in stressful situations as opposed to react, because you're responding to what's happening in this moment as opposed to reacting to what might happen. It also helps you connect on a deeper level with other people. So would everyone please rise? And please find one partner. When you find a partner, you may sit down. So find someone who you either are attracted to, you love them, or you've never met them before, or you're interested in meeting them, or you know them very well, or it's a stranger, or you see them by themselves. Please find a partner. And when you find a partner, sit down. And if you want, you can sit next to me. Does everyone have a partner? Okay. Okay, so connect with your partner, ask your partner, or figure out whose birthday is closest to December 25th. It doesn't matter if it's over or under December 25th. Okay, raise your hand if you're the partner whose birthday is closest to December 25th. Okay, does everyone know? Okay. Okay, so the person who raised their hand, you are the mindful speaker. Okay? You will be the person in your group who shares one thing you're grateful for and you expound on it in 3 ways. For example, I am so grateful that it's sunny outside today. I didn't have to, run in, and it just feels good, and I was able to wear a tank top, or, something like that. Now, the mindful listener is the other person. Raise your hand if you're the mindful listener. The mindful listener will say nothing. Now, you're going to switch up. You're going to have a chance to switch it up so you'll be able to speak too. But the mindful listener will say nothing. Your role is to be fully present for the mindful speaker. Sometimes when we're engaging people, we're so anxious because we have this tape playing in the back of our head and dialogue that we want to engage. But it's being present is allowing the person in front of you to fully express themselves and for you to be there for them. So you're going to look at the mindful speaker as if they are the star of a movie that you're watching. You will say nothing. The only thing you'll do is, and you will listen to their voice and their tone. You will listen, you will watch their body language and hear the words that they're saying. So, mindful speakers, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, please share with the mindful listener what you're grateful for and expound on it in 3 ways. Repeat back to the mindful speaker what you heard him or her say. Go. Raise your hand if you found that you had a mindful listener. Okay. Good. Now the mindful speaker is going to be the mindful listener, and the mindful listener is going to be the mindful speaker. So remember, the mindful listener will say no words. You're just going to hear, observe, and be present for the speaker. The speaker will share one thing that he or she is grateful for and expound on it in 3 ways. You have 30 seconds to go. Mindful listener will say, I see you. And you can give hugs and thank you very much.
The rest of that story. So, what I said to him was,
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. That was different, wasn't it? Did you feel like you made a connection with yourself? With somebody else? Maybe even God? Hallelujah. Oh God, you know the concerns, the fears, and the anxieties that are upon all of our hearts and live within us. You know, God, the needs that we have, and the people that we love and that we hurt for and that we pray for and that we lift up to you today. They are our friends and our family members. They are our world, our city, our neighborhood, our school, our workplace, ourselves. We ask, God, that by your Spirit, that you would infill and infect us and enable us to be your presence in the midst of life as we all experience it. And we pray for your grace within our world today. Hear us as we pray together the prayer which Jesus taught his disciples. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Thank you for being willing to turn aside from our regular